I've been to all the Georgia parks. There's 224 I've been to, and I just crossed the 50,000 QSO mark.
Hi, my name is K.Thomas, W1DED. Today I'm with Claude AC4SH. Claude is getting ready for the Georgia State Parks on the Air program that's coming up very, very soon. He'll tell us more about it. Claude, thank you for joining us.
Oh, glad to be here, Kevin. Thank you.
So before we jump into the Parks on the Air event that's coming up, I'd like to know a little bit more about your ham radio background. How did you get started in this hobby?
Okay. I was always interested in radio from early on, but like a lot of hams, we didn't want to get that Morse code behind us. And so in 92, when we first came out with the no-code tech license, I said, well, here's my chance. So because there's no more novice requirement for the 5-word code. And so I went ahead and took the test real quick, and then I realized technician only had limited privileges, and I wanted to work DX and actually be able to talk further. So I went through and studied and passed my extra in a few months after that. Learning 20-word code is pretty tough, but I got it, and just like anything else, it takes a little time, but it was fun. After that, I lived in a smaller town, Elberton, which is east of me now. I'm in Athens, Georgia. Had a good bit of land, and I was able to put up a small tower and a lot of wire, tall pine trees, and worked a lot of DX. And I think so, got well over 200 DXCC entities. That's when it was paper QSOs. So I got a big collection of those guys. Never got them all checked, but it was fun. And the Georgia National Guard actually took me to Norway. So I took my equipment over there, but didn't get much experience doing that. And also found out propagation above the Arctic Circle is pretty tough. So talked to Japan easier than I could the U.S. from there. And then we moved a few years later and got older, and things changed in everybody's life around that time, and didn't do very much ham radio after moving here to Athens. Homeowner Association doesn't really want you to have antennas, and honestly, if you put anything up, it's a lot of noise like everybody else does at QRM from or RFI gets from all the appliances around. So I didn't do much with it until 2020. During COVID, I wound up with some equipment from Elberton with a repeater there, and I sold it to the local ham radio club. And November 4, Juliet Alpha Hotel, Jess, I'm going to call him out. He pointed at an antenna. He had a Wolf River coil laying over there against the wall. And I said, what's that? Because they hadn't done much of radio. He said, I'd do POTA with that. And I said, what is Parks on the Air? And so, like anybody else, you go home, Google it. And I said, I've got leftover HF gear and mobile equipment. I can probably do that. And from that point on, I've been very active with activating parks in Georgia. I'm short one part now of having activated all, and it was just added on a few months ago. So I've been to all the Georgia parks. There's 224 I've been to, and I just crossed the 50,000 QSO mark about a week ago. So been out a lot, pretty active with POTA, and that's pretty much how I got to the start of the Georgia State Parks and Air.
Well, that's a pretty huge accomplishment to activate all of the parks in Georgia. How long did it take you?
Over about a year. I didn't go at it hard and heavy, but that's still, though this geography of Georgia is bigger than most people think. To get from here to the southwest corner, it takes about 3.5 to 4 hours. Plus, you got to get multiple parks along the way. So about a good solid year. But other than that, I hung around home. Only ever got away from home about 2 days at a time.
So as somebody who also got back into ham radio via Parks on the Air and also have activated a lot of parks in the state of Maine, I know that everybody has a different activation routine. What does your routine look like? What do you use for equipment, and typically how do you go about doing it?
I have 2 primary radios I use for activations, and FD891, the ASU, was the one I first got because it fit the qualification, full power, good receiver, transmit audio, and I've made up several different antennas. But since that time, I wanted a KX2, so I got an Elecraft KX2 about 2 years ago after a long wait for the radio. You know how that goes. And most of my activations in the last year and a half have been at 10 watts, and all have been on single sideband.
And what are you using for antennas?
Mostly homemade linked dipoles with junk wire and insulators, but I found out that they're really efficient. and I've settled on 7-meter soda beams fiberglass mast. I can have that up, and with a RG174, either put a drive-on mount or I put tripod legs out with the guys, and I can have it going in less than 10 minutes. And on there, because when you go to activate, you want to talk and want to log entries. You don't want to fiddle around with setting it up. But I do keep a couple other antennas. I've got 3 of those inverted V's or linked dipoles and about 3 in-fed halfways, and I swap them out occasionally.
And I know a lot of people will go to a park and get their 10 QSOs to get the activation, the official activation. Other people will stay longer and do a couple hundred. What's your style usually?
Usually, lately, it's been about 30 to 50 at a park. If I get 10, you get that pressure off because you don't have to worry about activations. And I almost always start on 40 meters, no matter what time of the day. And I found it's a great, I get near vertical instant skywave effect out of that low 40-meter dipole. And you can still reach about 200 miles away with no problem at any time, any kind of sunspot cycle almost. Hardly ever any problem doing that. So I'll stay on 40 until I get over 10 or 12, and if it's really going good, I'll sit there a lot longer. But I've had some big days. For me, a big day was 200 or so and an activation, but I get tired after a couple hours out there too. But I can usually have a park activated within 30 minutes easy, and then I'll go to 20 or 10 or 15, whatever I like to do. I guess the downside of the inverted V is you have to or the link dipole, you have to remove the links and move them. So I work 40 and 15 because it'll tune those quickly.
And Claude, do you have a particular memorable activation that you could tell us about?
That's hard, Kevin. There's been so many. I've got almost 1,000 activations now. Some of the most interesting ones were to me, and that's why I like 40 meters, is several personalities that I've spoken with over the years. A couple of them now SKs, but you can almost hear voices, and I think that's what I get the most out of it. Of course, it's always pretty fun to be called by another station. I was playing around with kind of a homemade vertical combination for 3 antennas, and I got a call from Whiskey Hotel 6. I was very surprised at that because I wasn't trying to get Hawaii, but 10 meters is in the magic band.
So I know the Georgia State Parks on the Air program. I know this is important to you. You've done it for a couple years now, I think. Tell me about the genesis of that program. Who decided this might be a good idea, and who are the players involved with that?
Actually, it wasn't my initial idea. I had a friend of mine, Kilo 4 Echo Alpha Kilo, Skip. He sent an email to me and a couple other guys, said, "What do you think?" Because we had met on the Parks and Air bands, and we all did a lot of activations. And we discussed it that was back in November 22 when we first met and talked about it, met with a few other guys, Richard M1RBD, K4WK, Wayne, and then we've added on several new. One of the bigger 2 is AE4XO, Chris, and W1RCP, Robbie, and we've all made it work pretty well. But initially, we weren't quite sure how many parks we wanted to activate. Back then, there were 204 parks in Georgia, and part of the purpose we had was to activate all the parks we could and make Georgia light up the POTUS spotter and also stir up interest in activators and hunters. And we felt like 204 was a bridge too far. So at that point, we came up with 50 parks, and they're all state parks. If you look at the POTUS map list now, the park list, you'll see they're all designated state parks. A couple of them are no longer state parks, government changes. And then in 23, at the end of the year, before we started the 24 event, we added on 2 more state parks, Stone Mountain Park and Olympic Centennial downtown Atlanta, which is a big draw, but it's a tough place to activate. So right now we got 52. Unless we get any more state parks, won't make any changes. But we were happy. I mean, we got a lot of, we had out of the first 50, we got 49 activated, so we missed one because of weather. Last year we had 52, and 51 were activated, and there's one park that was closed because it's primarily a lodging area, and nobody had rented lodging, so I just reserved that place down there just so we'll have one this year. That's really has been fun developing it, reaching out to activators that have been to parks, putting it on Facebook and YouTube podcasts, anything we can do to get the word out there. And it stirred up a lot of interest. Want to keep it going.
And Claude, what would you say the goal is? Is it considered a special event or a contest, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. And the reason I kind of went there is because I did get in touch with Parks and Air, because part of our logo has got the POTA logo in it. And, we wanted to be sure they were okay with that. In fact, for that and a couple of other things. One is we used the K numbers, now the U.S. numbers, the actual POTA designations. So I didn't want them to think we were stealing something from them. They were very receptive to it. And I had a couple of emails with Jason Johnston back then. And one of them was, what made me think about that was the contest and the warp bands and 60 meters as well. That we don't use those because POTA says, it's not really a contest, but it looks like one, so don't use those. And that was their only caveat.
And how is it structured? If I wanted to participate in the Georgia State Parks on the Air event, would I be trying to make contact with all 52 state parks?
Oh, you would. If you were a hunter out of state or hunter in state, you'd want to try to reach all 52, and we keep a list up. And actually, that's a good point, because I've pushed out the ham alert listing, recommended people use it, and a lot of people do that as well. I get notifications on the phone. I turned it off when we're not doing the contest or event, because it's not quite as important to me when somebody's in one of the 52 parks. But when I was activating, I wanted to reach all of them. And the hunters, the guys that actually won the contest on the hunter side, one in state, one out of state, they definitely use ham alert. And seems like one fellow got over 41, which is pretty tough when you're talking about individual activators at different times, different bands, different modes. So yes, that's what you would want to do, is try to reach them all. And the scoring structure on the hunters is how many Georgia parks you reach times the number of QSOs. So it really matters there.
So run that by me again. So how would a hunter win? What does that equation look like?
The hunters, it's a total number of Georgia park QSOs. So out of those 52, you can contact them multiple times. However, the multiplier effect is the number of distinct parks. So you might talk to 100 people in one park and only get 100 QSO points. But if you reach 3 or 4 or 5, that'd be the multiplier effect. So if, in my example, 41 distinct parks were contacted, and you made 100 QSOs, which wouldn't be many per park, you get the 41 times 100, so 4,100.
So can I contact a park multiple times, or does it need to be one per band, one per mode?
We go by straight POTA rules, so as long as it counts as an additional POTA contact, as long as it's not the same band, mode, or operator, you can contact the same park multiple times. And also notice that we've got a bonus for repeat offenders, somebody that has activated or hunted parks 2 years in a row, gets an extra 50 points. And if a hunter hunts Georgia parks on both days of the weekend, they get 100 extra points too for 2-day bonus, we call it.
And what about an activator? How does an activator score and potentially win?
I laugh because I was the top QRP activator last year. I went to 9 parks, so I got points for going to the different parks. I also contacted, I think, 29 of the Georgia state parks, which was pretty tough working from, and I was running QRP as well. But I took advantage of the ham alert. So it's the total number of QSOs. I had around 300 QSOs. Went to 5. I got extra 5 points for each one of the distinct Georgia parks. So that's 5 times, 29, so 145. Then multiply all that times the number of parks I went to, which was 9, so it pushed my score up. And of course, I had to be on the road a good bit over the weekend doing that. And also got the repeat offender bonus, which is 50 points like this for the hunter. I didn't get the first timer bonus, which is 50. And we added a new bonus this year for activators, a hike-in bonus. So if somebody hikes a mile in a park to activate the park per day. So if they go back to the same park twice, but they hike in both days, they get an extra 100 points per hike. So it's kind of, we didn't get many takers this year, but some of Skip especially, but some of the other guys did. And one of the fellows in my Athens radio club here hiked in four times, so he's a lot younger and more active than me. But it's just another incentive to keep people out in the parks.
And I presume after the contest that both hunters and activators submit their logs to you?
Exactly. And one of the points that we found as we started to prepare for the Georgia State Parks in there, we looked at other states. There were multiple ways that it happened. They would use different part numbers, different file formats. We decided to simplify it and stick with the ADF format just like POTA does. You don't have to put anything different in the log but what POTA asks for. We do specify that you need to put the your part number and the hunted part number. It works a lot easier, though POTA's able to extract that now from history. For our parks, it's a little easier, and that's the way I remember doing that we did initially when we emailed in logs. We can, even if there's a problem, we'll take it and modify it, but we do have a website that has a log upload function on it. Don't have to email them to us, and it generates immediately, analyzes that ADF, and calculates the score, which is another thing we pushed for, was to be able to have a quick results, because one of the most frustrating things to me is you work a contest, how did I do? And so now we can tell you how you did really quickly, and it may not be the final, but it'll give you your initial output. And on the other side of that is the first one we did pretty much manual calculations, and Skip and I and a couple other guys sat down and calculated all this, and we got Robbie helped us with it. He called it automatic scoring, but it's great. But also we realized there was no point in hunters sending in their logs, because we know who hunted. Because the activators send their logs in, we were able to figure out who the hunters were, and hunters can go and check their score just as quickly. So by the end of 2 weeks' time, we had it closed out and plan to do that again this year.
So to be clear, the hunters do not need to submit a log.
No, it's just like in POTA. Hunters can do a log. They can keep track of who they contact. A lot of people that I talk to as an activator want to know what park I'm at, and obviously that's important to them. But no, it's a lot, for us, works out really well to use the activator's ADF, and you get the hunter score just like you would if you did a POTA activation, and hunters there will find their scores. And of course, there's sometimes the hunter says, well, Joe didn't turn in his log, and so he can contact Joe by email if he wants to. And Joe's not getting any point credit for POTA or for Georgia State Parks in there. And also, one of our qualifiers is if somebody sends us a log as an activator, it's got to be loaded on POTA.app, or we can't qualify them that way either.
And Claude, I presume there could be more than one activator at a park at a time. Does that happen?
Oh, absolutely. That was one of the concerns we had initially. What if we've got a sign-up sheet where people can claim a park to go to, but nobody goes and stays 24 or the whole period, let's put it that way. And even if they do, very few of the Georgia parks are so limited in space that you can't have multiple activators. Sometimes they work as a team, as a club, and sometimes they could have 3 or 4 scattered about. And honestly, I encountered several other activators I would have never met otherwise if it hadn't been for sharing parks with them. And that's the kind of fun. You get park to park as well often.
So do you have a number on how many activators you had last year and how many hunters?
We had 49 single operators that were out there, and 9 clubs that had multiple activations in there too. We had 4,056 individual hunters that we calculated there.
And how many QSOs, Claude?
Almost 12,000, 11,744.
That's fantastic. And do you see this program extending to other states?
I do. I've spoken with some of the people at other states before this, and just noticed this morning that Texas POTA is having their event. This will be their 3rd year, as this will be our 3rd year as well. But they've changed over to use the POTA park numbers rather than some special park number, and using ADI files, which I think is a big plus. It makes it easier. If somebody wants to go activate a park and take part in our contest, it's just like you did an activation anywhere else. The only thing you have to be careful of, go to the right park. You can't go to a wildlife management area or a national park. It's got to be one of our 52 state parks.
Are all 52 state parks spoken for this year? Do you have activators assigned to each one?
No, we don't yet. We've got about 25 in there right now. And that's pretty much, we were hesitant or worried, when nobody signed up the first few months. And there was a lot of anticipation in 23. 24 is a little more laid back, and I relate it to the winter field day. About 2 weeks ago, I started working on a presentation for Winter Field Day, and they had about 500 parks or Winter Field Day sites on their list, and that's over 1,000, almost 1,100. But here we are the day before it starts. So we don't expect there any worries about people taking the parks down. It's more just an indicator who's going to be where, and kind of stir up some excitement. But even if you didn't put yourself down there, you can go to any park anytime and activate.
Well, if you'd ever love to come to Maine and set up a program here, I'd be on board with that.
I'd be glad to. In fact, really, that's part of the fun, is to encourage people, because our original purpose was to get more people in the park, activated, interested in parks on the air, and it's pretty much grown on its own, but we're having fun with it too. But I can see at any state. I actually thought a lot yesterday about how to integrate Georgia's with some other program, maybe get all the Southeast. Some of the other states have programs going, but so far I think we're pretty happy with ours. But I'll tell you, one of the more successful too was Ohio State Parks on the Air. They've been going a long time. In fact, they started theirs before POTA had actually started. In Illinois also, I talked to Larry, and I can't remember his call, but they've got a very active program there too. But sure, that'd be great. Not to mention that a lot of people need Maine.
Well, it makes me think of the POTA plaque event that doesn't exist now, but that was a national program contest. And I parked myself in K0001, Acadia National Park, and made 1,500 QSOs over the weekend. It was a blast. Really a lot of fun. Claude, I really appreciate you joining me today. Do you have any final comments for the listeners?
No, I'd say just come and see us. We do have some YouTube channels, AE4XO, W1RCP, I mentioned him, 84XT, and Kilo Oscar 4 Whiskey Fox Papa. She's got a channel too. And having that 1,500 at the park, that's what got me started with really ham radio and HF. I went and did my first field day, and I was on the receiving end, and I look forward to hearing you when you get down to the island soon too.
My name is K.Thomas, W1DED. I've been talking to Claude AC4SH. You really should go to the website and check out the Georgia State Parks on the Air program. Once again, Parks on the Air is leading the way, getting people on the air and having fun. Thanks again, Claude.
Hey, thank you, Kevin.